Many people chase happiness as if it were the ultimate prize of life. But have you ever asked yourself, what happens when happiness fades? When the high is gone, the laughter quiets, and the applause stops? What remains? That is the question we must sit with, because in the silence after joy, peace either speaks or suffering does. And if your inner world depends on the outer world, you will always be at the mercy of the next storm. The Shaolin path does not reject happiness, but it does not depend on it. Instead, it trains you to return to stillness, to cultivate peace. So ask yourself, are you chasing happiness or are you cultivating peace? Let us walk the mountain path of this wisdom together, step by step. In the journey of life, we encounter many moments that bring joy, moments that light up the heart and make us feel alive. A warm embrace, a good conversation, a beautiful sunset, the taste of a favorite food. These moments are precious, but they are also fleeting. They come like travelers, unexpected, welcome, but never staying too long. This is the nature of happiness. It visits us, it does not live with us. But what happens when the moment is over? When the music stops, when the room grows quiet, when we return home and are alone again with ourselves? What do we find? That is where peace, or the absence of it, reveals itself. In the Shaolin tradition, we are taught not to depend on visitors to feel complete. Happiness is welcomed, yes, but it is not the goal, it is not the foundation. Instead, we are taught to build something much deeper and far more resilient. Peace is not flashy, it does not shout, it does not demand attention, it simply is. Like a mountain unmoved by the wind, peace remains even when all else changes. There is a saying in the monastery, do not build your house on the weather, build it on the earth. This means do not build your inner world based on emotions that rise and fall. Build it on awareness, on clarity, on stillness. You can be at peace even when you are not happy. This is something many people have not yet realized. We are conditioned to think that feeling good is the purpose of life, that constant stimulation, comfort and pleasure are the signs of success. But the monk knows. A person who cannot sit in silence without anxiety is not free. A person who cannot endure discomfort without breaking is not strong. And a person who cannot find peace without pleasure is not yet awake. Peace is a home you return to, not something you have to earn. But to return to it, you must build it, day by day, breath by breath. Not with things from the outside, but with discipline from the inside. When we train at sunrise, before the mind is filled with the noise of the world, we learn to listen to our breath, our body, our thoughts. We do not chase pleasant sensations, we observe them. We do not run from discomfort, we sit with it like a guest who has something to teach us. And through this stillness, something incredible happens. The mind softens, the heart opens, and peace enters, not loudly, but fully. To be human is to feel. To be alive is to move through the entire spectrum of emotions. There is nothing wrong with wanting happiness, but to only want happiness is to miss the deeper treasure. Because it is only when we stop clinging to the high moments that we begin to discover the quiet strength that was always there beneath the surface. Happiness will always depend on what is happening. Peace will depend on how you relate to it. When you realize this, your entire life shifts. You stop chasing what is temporary and you begin cultivating what is eternal. A peaceful person can still enjoy happiness, but is not broken by its absence. A peaceful person can walk through suffering and still carry light within. In this way, peace is not the opposite of happiness. It is the container that holds it. Like a bowl holds water, peace holds all emotions: joy, sadness, fear, love. Without spilling, without judgment, it makes room for everything, but is defined by none of it. You do not need the world to be perfect to feel whole. You simply need to stop outsourcing your wholeness to what changes. Let happiness visit when it may, but build your foundation on what remains. Build it on presence. Observe how most of us move through life, reactively. We wake up, check our phones, see a message that pleases us, and we feel happy. We receive a compliment, and suddenly the world feels lighter. Someone praises our work, likes our photo, acknowledges our effort, and we feel elevated. But just as quickly, a single criticism, an unexpected delay, or a negative comment can pull us down. In this cycle, our emotions rise and fall like waves caught in the pull of the moon. This is not stability. This is not freedom. This is reaction. Happiness, in the way most people experience it, is simply a favorable reaction to circumstances. It is a consequence of external validation, of pleasing conditions. But what happens when those conditions shift, as they always do? What happens when the praise turns to silence, the victory fades into memory, or the noise of the world drowns out your voice? The happiness dissolves, and what remains is either restlessness or peace. The path of peace begins when we realize that reactions are not who we are. They are impulses, temporary, surface-level responses to impermanent events. A peaceful mind is not constantly reacting. It is observing. It watches the waves without becoming them. This is why in Shaolin philosophy we train not only the body, but the awareness behind it. Because real strength is not the ability to strike with power. It is the ability to not strike at all when provoked, and to remain centered. In the monastery, the first lesson in meditation is to watch, not to change, not to analyze, just to watch. Watch your breath, watch your thoughts, watch your feelings. Over time, you begin to notice you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings. You are the space of being, not a reaction. It does not depend on good news or perfect days. It rises from presence. You can experience peace even when there is chaos around you. Not because you ignore it, but because you are no longer defined by it. Peace does not mean the absence of conflict. It means the absence of inner conflict, where your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are in alignment. It's why we say peace is not something you find, it is something you uncover. It has always been there, underneath the noise, underneath the wanting, underneath the resistance. But to access it, you must learn to stop chasing, to stop needing everything to go your way. Because every time you say, I will be happy when, you postpone your inner stillness. Every time you say, I can't be at peace until, you attach your well-being to something outside of you. And that is the great illusion. Nothing outside is stable. Nothing outside is forever. Everything outside can be taken, but peace that comes from within, that you build with your breath, your attention, your presence, that is yours. You may not always feel happy, that is natural. Life has highs and lows, joy and sorrow. But you can always return to a peaceful state. How? By remembering that you are not what happens to you. You are how you meet it. In Shaolin teachings, we say that the mind is like a lake. When disturbed, it cannot reflect the truth, but when still, it mirrors reality clearly. Peace is not something that arrives when life is quiet, it is the quiet you bring to life. It is the choice to respond with clarity, not impulse, to breathe before you speak, to pause before you act, to accept what is. The world will always move fast. The emotions will rise and fall. But in the space between the stimulus and the response, there is a gap. And in that gap lies peace. Not as a thought, not as an emotion, but as a state. A grounded, unwavering presence that does not need to be excited to be content and does not collapse when things go wrong. This is the essence of the Shaolin path, to walk through life without being swept away by it. To remain still even when the world around you moves. Modern life often teaches us to chase happiness like a hunter chases prey. We are conditioned to seek pleasure in everything we do. We want the best food, the most comfortable experiences, the easiest path, the next high. And when we don't get it, when the pleasure fades or doesn't arrive at all, we suffer. Not because the situation is unbearable, but because our expectation of constant pleasure has not been met. This is the difference between happiness and peace. Happiness is often tied to pleasure. It arises when things feel good, when life is soft, when the conditions around us align with our desires. But peace does not depend on pleasure. It begins where desire ends. It is not based on conditions being comfortable. It is based on the mind being clear. There is a story from Zen tradition. A monk was walking through the mountains when a sudden storm came. The wind howled, the rain stung his skin, but he kept walking. Another man, caught in the same storm, cursed the weather, shouted at the sky and demanded the sun return. One walked with the storm, the other resisted it. Yet both were in the same situation. The difference was not the storm, it was the mind. This is what it means to accept reality. Peace arises when you stop demanding that life always feel good and start relating to life as it is, not as you wish it to be, not as you think it should be, but as it truly is, in this moment. And in that surrender, there is power. The Shaolin warrior trains not to avoid discomfort, but to master it. Cold mornings, aching muscles, empty stomachs, silent meditation. The monastery is not a place of luxury, it is a place of discipline. And yet those who train there experience a deeper peace than most ever know. They breathe with the cold, they move with the pain, they observe the hunger. They witness every moment as it is, without labeling it as good or bad. This is the essence of peace, the willingness to stay present with what is uncomfortable without immediately trying to change it or run from it. When you seek only pleasure, you become a slave to circumstances. But when you learn to accept reality, you become free. This is not about passivity, it is not about giving up, it is about deep inner alignment. It's about meeting life with calm rather than resistance. When you're angry because something shouldn't have happened, you suffer twice, once from the situation and again from your resistance to it. But when you meet the moment without inner friction, you make room for wisdom to emerge. In Shaolin philosophy, we often speak of the bamboo. It does not resist the wind. It bends, it flows, and yet it is strong. Not because it refuses to move, but because it adapts. In the same way, peace does not come from standing rigid against reality. It comes from flowing with it, without losing your center. Ask yourself, how often do you reject the present moment? How often do you say, this is not how it should be? Every time you do, you fracture your inner harmony. you create a gap between reality and expectation, and that gap becomes suffering. But when you close that gap, when you stop arguing with what is, you begin to experience something profound. Peace not as a reward for having a good day, but as your natural state of being. A state that can exist even when you are tired, even when you are hurt, even when you are disappointed. Because peace is not found in pleasure, it is found in presence. In the breath you take, fully aware. In the sensation you feel, without judgment. In the pain you do not resist, and a joy you do not cling to. The more you practice this, meeting reality without resistance, the less you suffer. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more accepting. And with acceptance comes stillness. And with stillness, a quiet strength that no external pleasure can match. Listen to the world around you. The laughter, the applause, the excitement, the celebrations, the desire to be seen, to be recognized, to be validated. This is the sound of happiness. It is often loud. It seeks an audience. It wants to be shared, documented, captured in photographs and celebrated in public. There is nothing wrong with this. It is human to want connection and joy. But let us look more deeply. In the monastery, we learn that true contentment does not need noise. In fact, the deeper the contentment, the quieter the life becomes. Peace, unlike happiness, does not seek attention. It does not need to be posted or told or shouted. It is enough for itself. This is why the Shaolin monks wake before the sun. Before the world begins its race, we sit in stillness. Before the first word is spoken, we listen to the breath. The silence is not empty, it is alive. It is full of answers. But these answers are not spoken in words. They are felt in stillness. That is where peace lives. We have been taught to equate a full life with a noisy one. But noise is not proof of depth. A waterfall is loud, but it is the still lake that reflects the stars. In the same way, a person who is constantly seeking attention may appear joyful, but inside they may be unsettled, fragmented, unsure. Because when the noise stops, they feel empty. Silence is the true test. If you can sit in a room alone, without music, without your phone, without needing to be entertained, and feel at peace, you are free. But if silence feels unbearable, it is not because silence is painful. It is because silence reveals what is hidden. And what it reveals is the inner condition of your mind. This is why monks value silence, not as a practice of isolation, but as a path to intimacy with oneself. In silence, the masks fall, the distractions disappear, and you are left face to face with yourself, not the image you present to the world, but the raw, unfiltered self, the part of you that cannot hide in performance. Peace is cultivated here, in the quiet, in the mundane, in the moments nobody sees. The way you prepare your tea, the way you sit with your thoughts, the way you walk without rush. These simple actions, performed with full awareness, become sacred. Not because others admire them, but because they bring you into deep alignment with the present moment. Happiness often demands more excitement, more achievement, more attention. Peace, on the other hand, asks less. Less doing, less chasing, less noise. We must understand this difference. One path is exhausting. One path is exhausting so happiness can never be fully quenched. The other path is liberating, DC peace does not come from getting more, but from needing less. There is a Shaolin teaching, the one who knows silence knows balance. It means that through silence we return to the center. We hear the breath, we hear the heartbeat, we remember that we are not the titles we wear, nor the place we receive, nor the roles we play. When you speak less, you listen more. When you listen more, you understand more. And with understanding comes clarity. And with clarity, peace arises. A mind that is constantly stimulated cannot be still. And a mind that cannot be still cannot be free. So the question is not, how much happiness do you have? The question is, can you sit in silence and feel whole? This is not something to answer quickly. It is something to sit with, something to breathe into. Because in the stillness, you may find not only peace, but also the truth about what you've been running from. And in facing that truth, you come closer to who you really are. Not the version of you others admire, but the one that remains when everything else is quiet. Consider the way most people define a good day. The sun is out, things go smoothly, people treat you kindly, your plans work out. Then you say, I'm happy. But what about the days when it rains? When people misunderstand you? When unexpected challenges appear, or when life simply doesn't go your way? Are you still okay? This is where the path begins to split. Happiness, for most, is a condition. It arrives when certain boxes are checked. It is fragile because it depends on things outside of you, circumstances, people, results. Remove just one of these and the happiness begins to fade. And if your well-being is tied to such conditions, you are not free. You are always at risk of collapse. Peace, however, is built differently. It is not tied to the weather outside, but to the climate inside. It is not dependent on agreement, applause, or perfect timing. It is something you carry, not something you chase. And once cultivated, it becomes unshakable, not because the storms stop coming, but because you no longer fall apart when they arrive. In Shaolin training, discomfort is not avoided. It is welcomed as a teacher. Long hours of standing meditation, holding postures until the body trembles, rising before dawn regardless of the season. These practices are not for performance, they are for transformation. To teach the body that endurance is greater than ease. To teach the mind that stability is not found in comfort but in presence. The one who trains only when conditions are perfect will never reach mastery. But the one who shows up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, builds an inner strength that no one can take away. That is what peace truly is. An inner fortress. Not built with walls of stone, but with habits of awareness, self-inquiry, breath, and discipline. Peace is the calm beneath the surface, even when the waves above are crashing. It is the capacity to be steady in the middle of emotional turbulence, to observe rather than be overwhelmed. When you depend on happiness, you are vulnerable to the changing winds of life. But when you cultivate peace, you become the mountain, not unaffected by change, but unmoved by it. There is a proverb in Zen, the bird does not fall from the sky because the branch breaks. It flies because it has wings. When you build peace, you grow your wings. You no longer rely on the branch, whether people stay or leave, Whether success comes or delays, whether the world celebrates you or forgets you, you remain rooted in yourself. Happiness often whispers, I need more to feel whole. Peace says, I already am whole. This is why peace is not loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It is steady, it is deep, and most importantly, it is self-sustaining. It doesn't require external validation because it is nourished by your own discipline, your own stillness, your own practice. In moments of loss, a peaceful person grieves but does not become lost. In moments of failure, a peaceful person reflects but does not collapse. In moments of pressure, a peaceful person breathes, not because they are indifferent, but because they are centered. This centeredness does not come by accident. It comes through conscious cultivation, through the daily work of turning inward, of asking, who am I without the praise? Who am I when things don't go my way? Who am I in silence, specifically in stillness? If you only feel strong when life rewards you, your strength is borrowed. But when you feel steady even in disappointment, your strength is real. Peace is the inner agreement you make with yourself that no matter what happens outside, you will not abandon your own clarity, your breath, your values. You will return again and again to that quiet place within. The place where peace resides not as a temporary emotion, but as a permanent refuge. Everything that begins must eventually end. This is one of the simplest and most undeniable truths of life, and yet most people live as if it is not so. They build their lives upon things that will one day fade. Youth, status, success, admiration, even relationships. And when these things change, as they inevitably do, they are left with a void. The happiness they felt was real, but it was tied to something impermanent. And when the condition disappears, so does the happiness. This is the nature of all things born from the external world. They arise, they shine, and eventually they pass, like the bloom of a flower, beautiful, fragrant, radiant, but never permanent. To enjoy such beauty is human, but to cling to it is suffering. Because what you cling to, you begin to fear losing. In the monastery, we are reminded daily that nothing is ours to keep, not even our own breath. We do not practice to hold on. We practice to let go. And in that letting go, we discover a different kind of joy, not the fleeting kind that dances in the sunlight, but the quiet kind that remains in the darkness. That joy is peace. Peace is not threatened by the ending of things, because it is not born from them. It is not a product of gain, so it does not vanish with loss. It is not inflated by success, so it is not deflated by failure. Where happiness is rooted in conditions, peace arises from awareness. And awareness does not expire, it only deepens. A peaceful person understands impermanence not as a threat, but as a teacher. When you know everything changes, you no longer chase what is temporary, you begin to cultivate what is timeless. The breath, the body, the present moment, the stillness behind the thoughts, these become your companions. And they do not disappear when the plot stops. They remain with you through every season of life. We live in a world where people are constantly searching for what's next, the next thrill, the next possession, the next milestone. But the search is endless, because happiness, when tied to form, always moves just beyond reach. You get what you want, and then you want more. You reach a goal and then set another. This cycle never ends, and eventually the body grows tired. The spirit feels hollow. the joy becomes harder to touch. But the path of peace does not require chasing. It requires returning. Returning to yourself. Returning to what is already here. In Shaolin teachings, there is a saying, the more you remove, the more you become. This reflects the paradox of the inner path. When you stop trying to acquire, you begin to feel full. When you stop trying to impress, you begin to feel authentic. When you stop trying to hold on, you begin to feel free. Peace is not something that arrives. It is something that is uncovered beneath all the layers of desire, fear, and distraction. It is always present, but rarely accessed, because most people are looking outward. It is in the quiet moments, when the noise fades, that peace shows itself. After the celebration is over, after the achievement has been marked, after the world turns its attention elsewhere, in that silence, what do you feel? Is there restfulness? Peace is the ability to remain whole even when the world moves on. It is the light within that continues to burn even when no one is watching. If you build your identity around happiness, you must constantly defend it. You must protect it from change. But if you build your center around peace, nothing can truly disturb you. Not for long. Because you are not defined by what comes and goes. You are grounded in what remains. The seasons will change. The roles you play will evolve. Your face, your body, your voice, they will all age with time. This is natural. But peace is ageless, because peace is not a feeling. It is a state of being, a place within you that does not move, even as the world does. When you sit quietly, when you are no longer doing but simply being, can you feel it? That presence that needs no name, no praise, no reason. That is peace, and it endures. When we reflect upon these teachings, a quiet truth emerges. Happiness and peace are not enemies, but they are not the same. Happiness comes and goes like weather on the surface of the sea, but peace lies in the depths, calm, undisturbed, always available to those who learn how to descend into stillness. The world will continue to offer moments of joy, and it is beautiful to receive them. Smile when you feel happy, laugh when life opens to you, but do not build your identity upon these moments. Do not mistake their light for the sun itself, because when those moments pass, as all things do, it is not happiness that will hold you, it is peace. Peace is the space between the breaths, the awareness beneath the noise, the calm that remains after all expectations dissolve. It does not sparkle like happiness, but it sustains like water. Quiet, essential, enduring. So ask yourself, in the privacy of your own heart, am I building a life that depends on external joy? Or am I cultivating the kind of stillness that remains even when joy is absent? Start today. Not by seeking more, but by sitting with less. Not by doing more, but by simply being. Close your eyes. Feel the breath. And observe what remains when you stop chasing. That is where peace begins. A gentle challenge for you today. Find 10 minutes of complete silence. No phone, no music, no movement. Just your breath. Sit in that space and ask nothing from the moment. Simply observe. Listen. Let everything be as it is. Notice what arises. And more importantly, notice what remains. Nothing else is needed. Peace is what you are. Thank you for walking this path of reflection with me. May you carry the wisdom of stillness into your day. And may peace choose to stay with you quietly like a trusted friend.